Grief and anger in Israel today. This, the funeral of 15-year-old Ari Shopek, killed in one of 2 bomb blasts in Jerusalem this morning. The explosions at bus stops, as of yet unclaimed by any group, have rattled the country. Shooting and stabbing attacks have been rising, but bombings like these haven't taken place for years. Many fear this conflict is entering a new and dangerous phase. Those fears are fueled by growing Palestinian frustration and militancy, but also crucially by Israel's likely new hardline right-wing government. Despite still facing corruption charges that he denies, 5-time Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu looks set to lead again. After elections earlier this month, he's negotiating a coalition with ultra-Orthodox and far-right parties, promising to crack down on militants and expand Jewish settlements, widely considered illegal internationally. The expected new policing minister, once convicted of inciting racism and supporting a terrorist organization, visited the scene of today's bombing.
Taking a toll on terror means finding where the terrorists are coming from and going to that village, even if it's in the West Bank. Lay siege to them and go house to house in search of guns and to restore our deterrence and governance.
Israeli settlers have faced an upsurge of attacks this year, but have also been emboldened to carry out their own violence. This, a march in the occupied West Bank over the weekend.
Since the occupation started, we see almost every day an incident of settler violence. But yet again, I think that we can expect that when the settlers themselves are going to be the ministers and the ones who are going to control this government, then of course that the settlers and the people on the ground will feel their back is covered even more than before.
It's already been the deadliest year for Palestinians in the West Bank for more than a decade. The victims, both civilians and fighters. This morning, the funeral of another teenager. Ahmed Shahade, shot dead by Israeli forces overnight after taking part in clashes in Nablus. Fresh militant outfits are emerging. Young Palestinians left hopeless by Israeli repression, disillusioned with the factionalism of older groups and Palestinian political leadership. This old conflict is claiming a new generation.
Well, let's speak first with Israel's ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hotovely. Thank you for coming in.
It's a very sad day for us Israelis.
And it's been a terrible year.
I agree.
With so many people losing their lives. What's the Israeli government going to do now?
Well, let's start with the numbers, I think. Over 4,715 attacks on Israelis coming from Palestinian terrorists throughout the last year. And this is a striking number. And we need to address the fact that today, young Aryeh, not even 16, lost his life. We also, this really devastating photographs coming from his funeral. And think about those Israelis that all they want to do is to go to work and to send their kids to school, like every single person around the globe wants to start his day peacefully, and they've been attacked with those bomb attacks, been coordinated, this been calculated terror attack on our people and on civilians that are innocent.
But in terms of Israel's response, I mean, we've heard the new coalition partners of Mr. Netanyahu today talking about laying siege to people in the West Bank.
Krishnan, just for 1 second.
So what is Israel's military response going to be?
Just before we go to the military response, just let's not deliver here a message that it depends on what kind of Israeli government. This Palestinian terrorism has been going on in the last year, where we had a very liberal government, when we had Lapid as a prime minister, when we had, the Arab Muslim.
So the response is always the same, whoever's in government. That's what you're saying.
All I'm trying to say is Palestinian terrorism is against Jews and a Jewish state. It's not about this government or another. And every single prime minister, I think, all around the world has one priority: to keep his people safe.
Right. So,
and this is why we need to keep our people safe.
so what are you going to do then to keep your people safe beyond military response? Are you prepared to tackle the root issues here? Are you prepared to talk? Who are you prepared to talk to?
Well, first of all, Israel was always willing to talk. Unfortunately, it was the Palestinians who were never willing to talk, and they left the negotiation table time after time. But if we'll now try to be optimistic.
But when you say you're prepared
Yes.
to talk, who are you prepared to talk to? Is it just the Palestinian Authority?
Actually, you should ask the Palestinians, because it looks like the leadership is divided between Hamas, recognized terror organization, and the PLO. By the way, both leaders didn't condemn these terror attacks. And when you see leaders that are not thinking that this is something shocking that shouldn't happen, that people are using bombs to kill innocent people, this is something makes me think, do they really want peace?
Although it's not clear
Because Israelis
yet.
obviously want peace.
It's not clear yet precisely who's carried out the attack. No one has.
It's clear it's a Palestinian attack.
responsibility
It's
for
clear
it,
it's a
but-
Palestinian attack. And unfortunately, Hamas is praising the people that are, making these young people die.
But when you say the Palestinians need to work out who speaks for them, is Israel prepared to talk to Hamas?
Israel is willing to talk to all our neighbors. As you know, Hamas is a terror organization recognized by the UK. We're not negotiating with terrorists, but the thing is that even the PLO, that is, the official leadership of the Palestinians, is not controlling at the moment
But what's on
those
the table?
terror hubs.
What's on the table? Is a Palestinian state on the table?
No, I want to tell you what's on the table. Stop terrorism. And this is, me as a diplomat, when I go
Well, that's what they've got to do.
No,
but what is Israel prepared to
But
give?
this is what I'm asking to the international community. I mean, I'm here as a diplomat, as you know. I'm representing now the State of Israel as the ambassador. And my work is to go to all the British officials and to say, in order to bring peace to our area, to our region, you need first of all to call the Palestinians, stop this horrible terrorism.
But you
stop
know,
those attacks on Israelis, daily attacks on Israelis.
But
This
you
is
know
what we
that
need
if you
to
look
do.
at the numbers, you said, let's look at the numbers right at the
Yes.
beginning. There are 5 times as many dead Palestinians as there are dead Israelis.
95% of them
22.
terrorists. 95% of them terrorists. So we are actually protecting our people by going to those terror hubs like we did in Jenin, like we're doing on a daily basis, because the Palestinian Authority no more controls those terror hubs. And this becomes Israel's job, when it was supposed to be the Palestinian Authority's job to control those terror attempts on Israel.
Is a Palestinian state still on the table?
You should ask this to the Israeli Prime Minister. He's going to be very soon back to his
Well,
office.
you're the ambassador.
No, but the new government is going to be formed soon. But I think no matter who's the prime minister, I think everyone knows that in order to achieve any kind of solution, and what's our end game goal is peace, not just throwing some ideas to the table without having the end game. The end game is peaceful life, both to us and to our neighbors. And in order to achieve that, you need first of all stop violence and make sure that whoever is the leader of the Palestinians, he will call to this violence to stop in the streets of Israel.
Ambassador Hoseveli, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for joining us.
And of course, I'm sending really my deepest prayers to all the people being injured today, because they need our prayers too.
Thank you for coming. Well, let's move now to speak with the head of mission for Palestine in London, Ambassador Hussam Zomlot. Ambassador, thank you for coming. Thank you, Josh. Same question. What is the Palestinian Authority going to do about today's attacks?
Well, every life lost is a tragedy. And we know this best, we the Palestinian people, because only this month, 11 Palestinians were killed by the state-sponsored occupying army, including 5 children. Only last night in Jenin, Ahmed was murdered, a 16-year-old boy. The day before it, in Nablus, another boy was killed. A girl was shot in her car just a day before her birthday. She was 15 years old. We know very well the price of human loss. And this is why we have been set on focusing on the root cause of all this, set on how do we break away from this 75-year-old deadly cycle.
But are you even able to do anything about the violence? I mean, you are the Palestinian Authority. We don't know who carried out this attack, but you don't speak for Hamas, do you? So
No, we don't know anything. Let's not jump into any conclusion. What we know is that there is a military occupation with an organized army that targets Palestinian civilians. This year, until October, only in the West Bank, but besieged Gaza aside, the 2 million in an open-air prison, only in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, 125 Palestinians were murdered by the Israeli army, mostly civilians. And here why you and I need to discuss the systematic, chronic situation and how do we actually tackle.
All right, well, how? I mean, when we talk about the way forward, what is the way forward? The ambassador from Israel says the Palestinians won't talk. Is that true?
Let her say whatever she wants to say. The Palestinians have been set on talking. We have changed our DNA. We have accepted international resolutions to establish two states. I've heard you asking the Israeli representative, does she accept a Palestinian state? She refused to answer, and she will continue to refuse to answer because she does represent Israel. Israel is not interested in creating a state of Palestine. Here, answering your question, there are three things we need to tackle immediately. The first is the systematic oppression of the Palestinian people that have lasted for 75 years. This is very well built. It's very well reported by the United Nations and the international community. The second is the abdication of the international community of its own responsibility. We referred Israel to the International Criminal Court, and then we were blocked by the UK, and only last week...
What is the political route forward? I mean, those two things are matters of blame and responsibility, which I understand.
Those are important. Those are important. When only last week we seek the UN approval to go to the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice, ICJ, then the UK does not vote for that resolution, and the Minister of the Foreign Office today in the Parliament says that we didn't vote because this is a bilateral dispute. So why, Krishnan, did we create international system? Why did we create all these international conventions and rules? It is exactly because when accountability is needed, we enforce it on countries that invade, occupy, annex territory.
But what is on the table for you?
Build illegal settlements, which is a war crime. Otherwise, the duplicity and the double standards we are seeing in comparison to Ukraine is striking in our face.
But what is on the table in terms of a way forward?
Palestinian lives is on the table. You bring me here.
You see, this is a cyclical conversation, isn't it?
It isn't. It isn't. We are the ones who are paying much of the brunt of all this. You know, the media would invite me when an Israeli is harmed. But why wasn't I invited to discuss the murder of a Palestinian boy or girl only in the last 48 hours? Why is it always when Israelis are harmed? Now, this is also about how this whole conflict is perceived. When the international media will stop portraying this as a clash or as confrontation, not as a people under oppression that has the right to resist illegality.
Are you saying there is nothing to talk about?
No.
You know, specifically, unless Israel says Palestinian states on the table.
Israel will continue saying what it says. Israel will continue drifting
to the right. That's what I'm trying to get to.
I tell you one thing, international law. We need the full application of international law. We need what happened in all other conflicts. Only when the international community intervened, like in South Africa, put real pressure on the regime crumbled, and then Nelson Mandela came out of prison, and South Africa is where it is today. This is not happening. Israel is allowed to continue drifting to the extreme right. Now we have supremacists, Jewish supremacists, in Knesset and soon in government. Now you'll have a situation whereby if the international community does not intervene immediately, if the media does not give the Palestinian people their right, according to international law, to resist the illegality, if we don't frame it in the right way, you will invite me again and again to talk about the consequences, to talk about the symptoms, but not the illness.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed.